to implode into what would become the most talked about late-night disaster in television history. Jimmy Kimmel sat behind his desk that night with his usual relaxed smile, the studio audience buzzing with excitement. They had no idea what was about to unfold. His guest was someone who rarely did interviews anymore, someone who had become one of the most controversial figures in celebrity culture. When Meghan Markle walked out onto that stage, the applause was polite but measured. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than most people make in a year, her expression carrying that practiced camera-ready smile she had perfected over the years. Jimmy stood up to greet her, extending his hand warmly. She took it briefly, almost dismissively, before settling into the guest chair. Right from the start, something felt off. The energy was cold. "Welcome to the show," Jimmy said, his trademark enthusiasm still present despite the icy reception. "Thanks for being here." Meghan crossed her legs and adjusted her dress with exaggerated precision. "Well, I don't do many of these anymore. I'm very selective about where I appear." The audience shifted uncomfortably. It was an odd way to begin. Jimmy, ever the professional, smiled and pushed forward. "We're honored then," he said, a hint of playful sarcasm in his voice that got a few chuckles from the crowd. "So let's jump right in. Jai, you've been in the news a lot lately. How are you handling everything?" Meghan's face tightened. "I think the real question is, why am I always in the news? I've done nothing but try to live my life with dignity, yet the media treats me like I'm some kind of villain." Jimmy nodded thoughtfully. "I think people are just interested in your story. You went from being an actress to royalty to, well, California. That's quite a journey." "It's more than a journey, Jimmy. It's been a nightmare of persecution." The word persecution hung in the air like a thunderclap. Jimmy's eyebrows raised slightly. "Persecution is a pretty strong word," he said carefully. "Is it?" Meghan leaned forward, her voice rising. "When you've been through what I've been through, when you've been attacked relentlessly, when your every move is scrutinized and twisted, what else would you call it?" Jimmy shifted in his seat. "I think a lot of people would say that comes with the territory when you marry into the royal family. You had to know there would be intense public interest." Meghan's eyes flashed. "So you're saying I deserve it? Is that what you're saying right now?" "No, no," Jimmy said, raising his hands in a calming gesture. "I'm just saying that level of attention isn't exactly surprising given the circumstances." "You have no idea what it's like," Meghan shot back. "Sitting there in your comfortable studio, making jokes every night while people like me are suffering real trauma. You couldn't possibly understand." The audience had gone completely silent. This wasn't the fun, light-hearted banter they had expected. Jimmy's smile had faded, replaced by genuine concern. "I think we all have our struggles," he said diplomatically. "Different struggles, sure, but I don't think it's fair to assume someone can't empathize just because their life looks different from yours." Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Empathize? You want to talk about empathy? Let me tell you something about empathy, Jimmy. Empathy is what I've shown the world, despite being treated like garbage. Empathy is what I've extended to people who have done nothing but tear me down." Jimmy took a breath, clearly trying to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Okay, let's talk about something more positive. Your charity work. You've been involved in several initiatives. Tell us about that." But Meghan wasn't ready to move on. "You're doing it right now," she said, her voice sharp. "You're trying to manage me, control the narrative. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I come here to speak my truth, and you want to box me into talking about safe topics." "I'm just trying to have a conversation," Jimmy said, his patience clearly being tested. "That's kind of how interviews work." "Don't patronize me," Meghan snapped. "I know how interviews work. I've done more interviews than you can imagine. High profile, important interviews where real issues are discussed, not this surface-level nonsense." The tension in the studio was suffocating. Jimmy's producers were surely panicking in the control room. This was live television spiraling out of control. I'm not trying to patronize anyone, Jimmy said firmly. But I have to say, you came on this show voluntarily. Nobody forced you to be here. If you don't want to have a conversation, I'm not sure what we're doing. Meghan stood up abruptly. Excuse me? Are you seriously speaking to me like that right now? Jimmy remained seated, looking up at her with a mixture of confusion and frustration. I'm speaking to you like I would speak to any guest who's being hostile for no apparent reason. Hostile? Meghan's voice went up an octave. You think I'm being hostile? I'm being honest. I'm being real. Maybe you're just not used to guests who don't kiss your feet and play along with your little comedy routine? The audience gasped. Someone in the back row whispered something to their companion. Jimmy stood up now, his expression hardening. Okay, let's take a step back here, he said. I invited you on this show in good faith. I've been nothing but respectful to you. I don't know what's going on, but this isn't working. You're right. It isn't working, Meghan said, grabbing her purse from beside the chair. Because you're just like all the rest. You pretend to be nice, pretend to be understanding, but really, you just want to make me look bad. You want your little viral moment at my expense. Jimmy shook his head in disbelief. That's not true at all. I've asked you completely reasonable questions. You're the one who's turned this into a confrontation. Reasonable? Meghan's laugh was bitter and sharp. You call questioning my experience reasonable? You call dismissing my pain reasonable? This is unbelievable. I haven't dismissed anything, Jimmy said, his voice rising now. You're putting words in my mouth and attacking me for things I haven't said or done. Meghan pointed at him, her finger shaking. You don't get to tell me how I should feel or how I should interpret your questions. I know what I heard. I know what you meant. Then you're hearing something completely different from what I'm saying, Jimmy replied. And honestly, I think everyone here can see that. It was the wrong thing to say. Meghan's face flushed red. Oh, so now you're turning the audience against me? Really professional, Jimmy. Really classy. I'm not turning anyone against anyone, Jimmy said, exasperated. I'm trying to understand why you're so angry when I've done nothing to provoke this. Nothing? Meghan's voice dripped with sarcasm. You've done nothing. Your entire line of questioning has been designed to undermine me, to make me seem unreasonable, to paint me as the problem. And now you're gaslighting me on top of it. Jimmy ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of pure frustration. This is insane. I asked you how you were doing and about your charity work. Those are softball questions. If that's hostile to you, I don't know what to tell you. Don't call me insane, Meghan hissed. Don't you dare use that word about me. I didn't call you insane, Jimmy said quickly. I said this situation is insane. There's a difference. Is there? Meghan challenged. Because it sounds like you're implying I'm crazy for standing up for myself. The audience was completely frozen. This had gone so far beyond awkward that it had entered some new territory of uncomfortable television. Jimmy looked directly at the camera, then back at Meghan. Look, I think we need to stop this right now, he said. This clearly isn't going well for either of us. No, you want to stop because I'm not playing your game, Meghan said. You want to stop because I'm calling you out and you can't handle it. That's not it at all, Jimmy said. I want to stop because you're being incredibly rude to me for absolutely no reason, and I'm not going to continue to subject myself or my audience to this. Meghan's eyes went wide. I'm being rude? I'm being rude? That's rich coming from someone who makes a living mocking people and making cheap jokes at others' expense. I make jokes, yes. It's a comedy show, Jimmy said, his voice tight with controlled anger. But I've never been cruel. I've never gone out of my way to hurt people. And I certainly haven't been anything but kind to you tonight, despite how you've treated me. Kind? Meghan practically spat the word. You call this kind? You've been condescending and judgmental from the moment I sat down. Jimmy shook his head slowly. I really haven't. And I think if you watch this back, You'll see that. But right now, you seem determined to be offended no matter what I say. There it is again, Meghan said triumphantly. You're telling me how I feel. You're telling me that my reactions aren't valid. This is exactly what I've dealt with for years. I'm not invalidating your feelings, Jimmy said, his voice strained. I'm saying your feelings don't match reality. There's a difference. Meghan grabbed her microphone and yanked it off her dress, the wire pulling taut before disconnecting. I don't have to sit here and take this. I have been disrespected, talked down to, and treated like I'm some kind of diva when all I've done is try to have an honest conversation. An honest conversation involves listening as well as talking, Jimmy said. And you haven't listened to a single thing I've said. Because what you're saying is nonsense, Meghan fired back. It's manipulative nonsense designed to make me look bad. Jimmy threw his hands up. You're making yourself look bad. I'm literally just standing here trying to figure out what's happening. What's happening is that I'm leaving, Meghan announced. I don't need this. I don't need you or your show or any of this. Then go, Jimmy said, his patience finally snapping. Seriously, if you want to leave, leave. Nobody's stopping you. Meghan's mouth dropped open. Did you just tell me to leave your show? You just said you were leaving, Jimmy pointed out. I'm simply agreeing with you. If you're this miserable being here, why stay? Because you don't get to kick me off, Meghan said. You don't get to win this. This isn't about winning, Jimmy said, exhaustion creeping into his voice. There are no winners here. This is just a disaster. A disaster you created, Meghan insisted. How? Jimmy asked, genuinely bewildered. Please explain to me what I did to create this. I would love to know. Your whole attitude, Meghan said vaguely. Your tone, your questions, everything. My attitude has been professional, and my questions have been normal, Jimmy countered. So you're the one who came out here with a chip on your shoulder ready to fight. I came here ready to speak my truth, Meghan said. No, you came here ready to be a victim, Jimmy said, the words coming out before he could stop them. The studio went dead silent. Meghan's face went pale, then red. What did you just say to me? She asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Jimmy took a deep breath. I said what I said. You walked onto this stage looking for a fight, looking for a reason to be offended, and you found it even though it wasn't there. You have no right to speak to me like that, Meghan said. Actually, I do, Jimmy said. This is my show, and you've been incredibly disrespectful to me since the moment you sat down. I've tried to be patient. I've tried to be understanding, but enough is enough. Meghan's hands were shaking. I want you to apologize right now. For what? Jimmy asked. For defending myself? For not letting you walk all over me? I don't think so. This is unbelievable, Meghan said. The way you're treating me right now is absolutely unbelievable. The way I'm treating you? Jimmy's voice rose. You've insulted me, my show, my questions, my empathy, and somehow I'm the bad guy? That doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense if you're willing to see it, Meghan said. I see someone who expected to come here and say whatever they wanted without any pushback, Jimmy said. And when you got even the slightest bit of normal conversation, you couldn't handle it. Meghan picked up her purse and slung it over her shoulder. I'm done. I am completely done with this. That's probably for the best, Jimmy agreed. You're going to regret this, Meghan said as she started walking toward the stage exit. I already regret it, Jimmy called after her. I regret booking you. I regret thinking this would be a good conversation. I regret wasting everyone's time. Meghan stopped and turned back. You're a small, petty man, Jimmy, and everyone watching this will see that. They'll see what actually happened, Jimmy said, and that's all I need. Meghan made a sound of disgust and turned back toward the exit. As she walked off the stage, the audience sat in stunned silence. No one knew whether to applaud, boo, or just sit there in shock. They chose shock. Jimmy stood alone on the stage, his microphone still on, his expression a mixture of anger, confusion, and disbelief. He looked at the camera, then at the audience, and then back at the empty guest chair. "Well," he said finally, his voice hoarse, "that happened." A nervous laugh rippled through the audience. Jimmy walked back to his desk and sat down heavily. "I honestly don't know what to say right now," he continued. "I've done thousands of interviews. I've talked to people who disagreed with me, people who were upset, people who were having bad days. But I've never had someone come onto this show and just attack me like that for no reason." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "I asked her how she was doing. I asked about her charity work. Those were my questions. That's what set this off. And I just want everyone watching to know that I never intended any disrespect. I never tried to hurt her or make her look bad. I was just trying to have a conversation." The audience started clapping, softly at first, then building. Jimmy held up his hand to quiet them. "I don't need applause. I'm not the hero here. There are no heroes. This was just sad. It was sad to watch someone so defensive, so ready to be hurt that they couldn't even have a basic conversation. And I feel bad about that. I really do." He looked down at his desk, shaking his head. "But I also don't think I did anything wrong. I don't think asking someone how they're doing is an attack. I don't think trying to have a conversation is persecution. And I'm not going to apologize for standing up for myself when I was being treated badly." Another round of applause, stronger this time. Jimmy smiled weakly. "I appreciate that. I do. But honestly, I just want to move on. This has been one of the strangest nights of my career. And I'd like to forget it happened." He shuffled some papers on his desk, a gesture of moving forward. "We're going to take a quick break," he said to the camera. "And when we come back, hopefully things will be a little less insane. Stay with us." The cameras cut to commercial. In the studio, Jimmy sat back in his chair and let out a long breath. His staff rushed onto the stage, asking if he was okay, trying to figure out what had just happened. Jimmy just shook his head, still processing. The guest chair sat empty, a stark reminder of how quickly things had fallen apart. What should have been a routine interview about life, charity, and moving forward had turned into a verbal battle that nobody won. The conversation that was supposed to last 20 minutes had barely made it past 10 before collapsing under the weight of manufactured grievances and defensive anger. Jimmy had tried to be fair. He had tried to be kind. He had tried to give his guest every opportunity to have a good experience. But sometimes, no matter how hard you try, people come to the table with their minds already made up about how they've been wronged. And when that happens, there's nothing you can do to change it. The crew prepared for the rest of the show, moving equipment, adjusting lights, trying to reset the energy in the room. The audience members whispered among themselves, still shocked, still trying to make sense of what they had witnessed. As the commercial break wound down, Jimmy straightened up in his chair, put his professional smile back on, and prepared to continue. Because that's what you do. You move forward. You don't let one bad moment define the whole night. But everyone in that studio knew they had just witnessed something that would be talked about for a very long time. The interview that went wrong in every possible way. The conversation that never was. The moment when expectation collided with reality and shattered into a million uncomfortable pieces. And through it all, Jimmy Kimmel had kept his composure, defended himself when necessary, and refused to be bullied in his own house. He had asked reasonable questions and received unreasonable responses. He had extended